Every so often, a designer comes along who doesn't just transform spaces, but redefines what it means to truly live in them. Today on Beyond the Design, we sit down with Edward Maestri, the visionary force behind Maestri Studio, known for its seamless blend of bold color, historical reference, and a striking sense of modern sophistication. From preservation to reinvention, from Dallas to the national stage, this is a story of Edward Maestri. This is Beyond the Design. Welcome to the show. We're glad to have you today, and let's just get right into it. You've built an impressive career working on everything from luxury residences to iconic commercial spaces. What originally drew you to the world of design?
You know, I have always felt that design was just part of my DNA. I grew up in New Orleans and have always been just amazed by the history there and the rich architecture and design. And quite literally, you know, our family, it is integrated into our DNA. So our family name comes from the Maestri Conoscini in Italy, in northern Italy, where our ancestors you are stonemasons. And you know, I've learned a lot through research. That was my COVID project of researching history. That really a lot of people in my family have always been integrated into some type of design or building. As a kid, my dad would always sit and sketch with me, and sketching was really my way to observe and take in and learn about, you know, the built environment and what I was drawn to. And I still practice that. I take sketchbooks everywhere, but I have known since I was probably 5 years old that I wanted to be an architect and designer.
You just knew it. It was in your DNA.
Always.
Well, your approach to design seems rooted in deep appreciation for artistry and craftsmanship. And as you mentioned, from your family heritage. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the influences that helped shape your journey and the creative aspect of you wanting to go into design?
Absolutely. So, growing up, there was always a home improvement project going on at our house. And I really enjoyed all aspects of that with my mother and father. I knew that I wanted to do something in the creative field. I was always very into art, you know, pastels, painting, color, all of that. And I was fortunate in college to be able to study abroad in Italy during architecture school. And my study abroad was really that pivotal turning point where I was so immersed by all of it, right? You have the rich interior design and design in general that, you know, Italy is so known for. And I think that has really stayed with me and kind of translated into how I think about projects as a very full, holistic service project, right? So I approach all of our projects from start to finish that we are designing every aspect of that. Furniture, the landscape, the interior, the architecture, all of it at once.
So do you speak Italian?
I wish I did.
What school did you go to in Italy?
Well, I studied at Texas A&M University in College Station, and they had a study abroad program with Santa Chiara Study Center. It was right outside of Florence.
Okay, fantastic. I went to school in Rome, so yeah.
Amazing.
I used to speak Italian.
I used to know it a lot better than I do now.
When you're immersed in it, it just comes naturally. You know, you're gonna have to sink or swim.
Absolutely.
Well, what do you think is the most important qualities of a successful designer today, and how do you foster those qualities within your team?
I think the best quality is really to constantly be able to pivot and evolve. I think that especially in today's world with how fast things are changing, you have to be able to learn and take criticism from your team and understand really what you need to do better at and how to better service the client. And of course, with design, it's unlimited. There are so many areas so many aspects of design to pull in. I think for me, I like to build a team that can wear many hats and to be able to really work on every aspect of the project seamlessly, as well as understand and be really intuitive to do what the client is asking us to solve for.
So you do a lot of projects, like I mentioned in the opening. You do hospitality, residential, and commercial spaces. and there's a lot of authenticity and storytelling in your design work. How do you incorporate that thesis and kind of programming language with your team? What's the process?
I really encourage the team to get as creative as possible and to pull inspiration from anywhere. I think inspiration can always be translated into a design in some aspect. So I really want every single project to be treated as a prototype. We do not repeat. We are very into the details. We also want to make sure that what we're designing for really fits the needs and personalities of our client and what their vision is, and helping them also understand that vision. Sometimes clients will come to us and not really understand what they are really asking for. But really encouraging my team to just pull from anywhere. I mean, we've had image boards in the studio that we'd love to pin up images from magazines. We've had, fashion, cars, the interiors of cars. I mean, anything. And especially for me, travel is what really exposes me. And I think that's why my study abroad was such a pivotal turning point, because it was the first time I really got out into the world to see what was different and what really, stuck out at me as far as what my interests were. But my team, I want to build a team that everyone is super passionate about what we do. And as designers, it's so hard to turn it off, right? Like we have a team Instagram, and we're always sending these little things back and forth. But for me, that's the fun part. It's fun nerding out and being creative over the smallest detail to really bring a big impact to our projects.
So being a creative and traveling as much as you do, are you able to turn it off when you go into a hospitality environment and not
Absolutely
nitpick?
not. I can't. I literally can never turn it off. And I've learned to accept that and just embrace it. That it's actually what I enjoy about going to these different environments. I just take in every little aspect of it.
Is there a Maestri Studio component that you try to, a signature that you try to install within each project?
There's really not. I'm sure there's, I've had people tell me, oh, I can tell about some Maestri project, and I'm sure there's some link, but as we try to really treat each project differently, I try not to do. Now, from New Orleans, so of course I love things like gas lanterns and courtyards and water features and, and a lot of layers. I like for projects to feel like, even if they're brand new, to feel like they tell a story of time. So that's always important to me. And that is something we incorporate into all of our projects for sure.
If your design philosophy were a piece of music, what genre would it be?
I think that it would definitely be jazz, because I do not believe in rules. I definitely edit as I go. I like to, have an entire design in mind, and then the client might say something and I just might spend it on a dime, because it helps me really hone in. So there's really no, set rule to follow. And I feel like that jazz is very much that way. And of course, that's my New Orleans heritage.
Yeah, it's in your DNA. Yeah. What's the most memorable place you've ever visited for inspiration?
My most memorable was Kyoto, Japan. I absolutely fell in love with it. Went for the first time about 7 years ago, and I've been back twice. We took our boys there, twice now during Thanksgiving and Christmas. Everything about it, I feel like the design elements are so simple and understated, but yet so intentional and so thought through. You can go to the smallest cafe sometimes, and everything is thought out, even down to, the embroidery of the napkin. It's all very just thought through, which is how I like to approach design. And what I love so much about it as well is the inspiration that's brought in from nature. I very much try to blur outdoors and indoors on our projects and really treat the entire site as the palette. And that was something that really struck a chord with me in Kyoto.
Plus the amount of details and the artistry itself and the craftsmanship.
The craftsmanship is amazing.
Yeah.
And just the way that I think that, things that break are just honored. And that's what I love too about New Orleans. That the houses there are old, and, you just embrace that. And that is the beauty There's beauty in that decay and that wear and tear and patina. It's something that I really miss about my hometown, and that I struggle with sometimes in Dallas, because Dallas is always very brand new, shiny, make it perfect. And I feel like you lose that error, the beauty and imperfection. Those little flaws that make things just incredibly beautiful.
Well, like you said, there's a lot of storytelling. There's a lot of essence of history, time, and place, but it doesn't grow old. There's a connectivity to the past, present, and the future in places like
Exactly.
New Orleans. So I think you get that from every corner instead of like new urban environments where everything is shiny and new. There's no history to it.
And the same thing with furnishings. I just finished a presentation this morning. We are using a client's existing beautiful marble table that they had in their breakfast for a few years with their kids in the entry to the house, as a main focal point. And they were concerned about, is it too worn? And I said, no. I'm like, you've earned that. Like, that is a story. That it's beautiful in the wear, and I think that's something that gets overlooked so much.
Very, very true. Well, you're known for creating destinations that capture a true sense of place. What's your process for ensuring authenticity in your designs and that the connectivity, as we mentioned and talked about, is there moving forward throughout, concept and the VE aspect, and then final project completion?
Well, it's always a constant build, and I try very much from the day one presentation with the client to really read the client of how they're reacting, and make sure that even if they don't say it out loud, we can fine tune it to be better suited to them. So I much want my client experience to be a conversation and very fluid process, that we are custom tailoring a unique product for them. It is not meant for the masses. We want it to have all the feels, right? We want it to feel like home. We want it to be reflective of them. So from very day one to construction documents and value engineering, it's always assessing what is important and what are the impacts that we can bring into projects. Even if there's a value engineering moment, how can we still bring a big impact into the home to tell a story? And, there's always a delicate balance too, of a sense of drama versus just, very a calm moment in the home. So that balance is always something we try to achieve, but definitely making sure that the client's heard, and that the authenticity of the project really comes to life then, when we are designing for them.
Well, Maestri Studio work blends classical techniques with contemporary innovation. How do you strike that balance between timelessness and fresh creativity?
I think that there's always new trends that I'm willing to try, or like new things that come out into the market. I definitely lean further on the timeless. And if something is, let's just say, a trend today that might have been used 30 years ago, I feel like it's fair game, right? It already has a history to it. So a good example is when, brass came back a few years ago. We had a lot of clients really freak out, but there's a way to reinterpret that, right? Because brass has been used for forever. So we always try to create that history and kind of the historic narrative in projects. And I think by doing that and bringing in that contrast of contemporary, it really does balance well. As long as the details are there and it all works together. I definitely like our projects to have layers and just obvious areas of a collected feel that do bring that to, that just kind of bring that storytelling, bring the authenticity to it, and balance the contemporary with the traditional.
True. Yeah. Well, how do you approach designing a space that needs to feel both designed and luxurious and also welcoming, warm and inviting? And you're getting that, especially you're doing residential and hospitality. And obviously, residential, it's about the personality and lifestyle of someone you intimately get to know. And where
Right.
hospitality is more about the unknown, it's about the brand and design theme and aesthetics and experiential environments. So how do you incorporate that feeling in, but still keep it very welcoming?
I think that the feeling comes from pieces that might have been with a client, like in residential, that might have been with a client for a long time, and keeping those pieces into the home, even if they're not perfect. Um, a good example is, we're doing a big renovation for a family home. Our clients are redoing the grandmother's beautiful home, right? And there's pieces in there that are not something they would probably buy today, but they work really well and they ground that story. So it does give that homey feel and warmness. And then balancing that with elements of a contemporary palette, I think it's a good yin yang. There's always ratios, and I'm not a big firm believer on set ratios of contemporary to traditional. I think, I'm very much a fan of if it works, it works. And bringing in elements that are important to somebody that they collected and may not really understand why they love it so much, but they do. I still have stuff in my home that I had in our very first house together that was not expensive, and it's a story, and it's a good balance of more accessible design versus high end, and I think that's also what brings that more into projects.
So tell us a little bit about some of the current projects you're working on besides the one you just mentioned.
Yeah, we have several. We're working on this great development in East Dallas, which is it's 16 homes that we're doing all of them, and it's all architecture. We're doing all of them different. None of them are alike, and the goal on that is to look like a neighborhood that developed over time between the 1920s and 1940s. So we're having a lot of fun with that. Pulling a lot of inspiration from California, um, all over the LA area was the inspiration for that. And we have several amazing careers jobs we're excited about, like the one I just mentioned, the family estate. We're doing that. It's an amazing property. And we do everything. So at the same time, we have some very contemporary new builds that we're working on and wrapping up. And we also have, a lot of historical work that we do. So historical renovation, as well as work in conservation districts within Dallas, where, it's always a challenge that we want to honor the fabric of the neighborhood, because most of the time these houses are being torn down, unfortunately. And when we put something back, we want it to definitely be a nod to what was there and to what the neighborhood, not disrupting that fabric. So for us, I think right now the most exciting projects, we have some contemporary projects in the PGA development in North Dallas, and then we have the one in East Dallas, and I love that blend of historic and modern. That's always kind of my thing.
All right. So when you started this creative journey of yours, what are you most surprised about that you didn't know that you thought you did?
I think listening to myself and understanding that it's the client is coming to us to be the expert. And I think very early in my career, I thought that I had to do everything to cater the other way around, right, where they bring inspiration in. I had to kind of find out what they were thinking. But now I feel like they trust the vision. So what I'm doing and what I've learned in almost 20 years now of doing this is that the client is going to have an inspiration, but they want me as a professional to push back and tell them how it can be better. And at the same time, listening to them about what it is about what I think is better that they do not agree on. So it's more of a dialogue. I definitely think that, the business side of design is something I wish they taught more in college. I think that's, as a, full firm owner, that's something that is a major learning curve that I didn't, it's a touch and go. It's you learn as you go. But I try to tell my staff the same thing. I'm like, there's never a perfect right answer, but the client wants to hear your instinctual answer. You're the designer, you're the expert, and that answer doesn't necessarily have to be right. It's the start of a conversation.
And you can say no.
Right.
In our field, the client's not always right,
If they decide to do something that I don't agree with, hey, they have to live with it. But it is my responsibility, I feel, to like voice that and to tell them how it can be better. But a lot of times there really is an underlying thing there that we have to kind of dig and find and figure out what it is about the design that they're not liking that we can tweak to make them love it. and usually just find out what exactly it is. I'll reference that presentation that I just finished, but we realized they do not like big bold patterns, just with little things that they said they don't like across the board. So it really is just listening and understanding and just keeping that dialogue open. I try to encourage my clients to constantly, if they think about something, just let us know. Like if we're driving and you just send us an email, like we want that dialogue. That's how we get the best projects.
Is there a favorite material of yours you like to work with, and why?
I lately have loved getting super creative, as boring as it may sound, with brick and creating interesting patterns and shadows and the way that we can really manipulate such a simple material to create something very special. I've been doing a lot of curved walls with it lately. Love working with natural materials such as marbles. I think it's timeless and endless opportunity. That has also translated into our mantle collection that we keep expanding upon. And of course, coming out of my travels in Japan, I love shosugiban. We've incorporated it into several projects that aren't even necessarily modern. We're doing one right now outside of Telluride, and was thrilled when the client showed me this picture. They said, "I don't even know what this is, but I love it." And I was like, "Love that material. It's gonna be perfect for your house." So I think right now that's what I'm really drawn to.
You briefly mentioned your mantle collection. Why don't you elaborate? What got you started to do that? What was the inspiration? And
Yeah, you know, I I am a big nerd and I carry a sketchbook all the time. And I have a sketchbook and I have a little ideas book that I bring on the plane and I carry all over when we travel. And I've always just found a lot of solace in by drawing, and I'll sketch what's around me. It could be a hotel lobby, it could be a bar, a restaurant, and I keep all these. And some of them are beautiful, and some of them are terrible. They're just scribbled. But the way the Mantle collection came about was I had all these little ideas about how shapes were fitted together, and we had started using those for custom mantles in clients' homes, and it was very well received by the clients. And I said, well, why don't we just try to put together a little collection of these? So we went through all my sketches. I sat down with my team. We used the sketches as inspiration. And the Mantle collection is really just pieces of environments that I've seen around the world. So we have one for Portland. We have some that are inspired by the Opera House in Paris. I mean, just little things here and there. And it's been a really exciting little project to kind of try on and see how we do and how we can get creative with these materials. And the fun part is that it's endless. Like we can keep coming up with all these little designs that make them unique.
absolutely. Well, what's one design rule you love breaking?
All of them. I hate design rules. I feel like it's the one area of life that shouldn't have any rules. Like, why? It's there's anything is possible. I mean, of course, there's things that I don't like. But everybody has their likes and dislikes, but I really am a firm believer of not sticking to the rules.
If you could collaborate with one artist or designer, living, past, present, who would it be?
Oh man, that is so hard. I, starting in college, going through architecture history classes, I have always been obsessed with green and green, and just the way that every integral part of those houses fit together, a lot of times without nails, and everything is designed. We just took the kids out last summer. We went to Pasadena and saw some of their projects, and the lighting, every detail is thought out. And again, it's a big a lot of their inspiration was from Japan, so maybe that's part of it. But I think that would be my dream. They do every aspect of this projects were done, and they're just amazing.
The artistry and the
It's
craft
incredible.
and quality. And yeah, it was meticulous and it was all hand done.
Yeah.
It was just amazing.
And everything was thought out. I mean, just even the way that colors in the room were meant to kind of change throughout the day before they had electricity. Just amazing details throughout it.
True. Yeah. Well, as a leader, you've guided your team through complex and large scale projects. What do you feel is the most important aspect of leadership when running a creative company?
I think it's always listening. I think it's always willing to change and learn. I have felt that, over the past almost 20 years of having Maestri Studio, that when I have new people come on board, I learn so much from them. And a lot of times it's the things that I would never have expected. It can be the way that they approach doing a design layout that they present to a client. It could be something they're inspired by. But I think that for me, that it's always keeping that voice open, that they can talk to me about it. And the biggest thing that I try to also instill on my team is that you do in this industry have to wear many hats. For a successful firm and a successful team, you have to be able to jump back and forth between projects. But there's always an up and down cycle in this industry. And right now we have a lot of new construction and historic renovation, but it very well might be that we have to go back at some point to bathrooms and kitchens, and you have to just kind of take that in stride. So I try to make sure that they can wear many hats and go back and forth. It's really important for me too, that especially how integrated our studio is among architecture, interiors, and landscape, that they're all interested in all aspects of that and how we can make each one of those better within. But it very well might be that somebody might have to pivot this month and work on interiors versus architecture. So just keeping that open, I think, is really important.
Is there a type or sector of the industry that you still have not worked in that you want to?
I would love to do restaurant. We actually had one a few years ago that we were supposed to do, but things fell through with the economy a few years ago, and it got pulled. I think that would be amazing. I would love to do, more hospitality work, like with hotels. I think that'd be amazing. Really anything. I think it all inspires me, and there's not a project that I think I would ever shy away from.
Is there a place you'd want to do a project that you haven't yet?
Oh gosh. Not necessarily. I feel like I've been fortunate. We're doing right now, a mountain house in Colorado. We've just wrapped up a little beach house in LA. We're doing a really cool townhouse in New York. So I feel like there's all these different types, but I think anywhere really. I mean, I would love to do something internationally. Dealing with an old historic building like that would be so much fun.
It's in your DNA.
Oh my gosh, I would love it.
You've said it now. Now it's out there, so it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'll put it into the universe.
There you go. Well, what advice would you give, Eddie, to young designers, particularly those that are looking to make their mark in such a competitive and ever-evolving industry?
I think the biggest thing would be to trust your instincts and not necessarily go with the grain. I think that lately, social media and Instagram and all of these platforms where designs are just churned out and you see them every day and you kind of get so used to it. I feel like people almost get stuck in this rut of feeling like you have to match what someone else is doing, not only in design, but in their career. And there seems to be these like steps people think they have to take. And I think that's one of the biggest things I've learned in my, in the past few years is that, it might seem like the right course, but it's not necessarily right for me. And I think listening to kind of that intuitive side of yourself to know what are your goals. It doesn't have to match everybody else, but that's actually going to make you stand out if you don't match that kind of status quo.
Well, there's a lot of, it's very competitive industry, and there's almost keeping up with the Joneses, so to speak, one up instead of seeing just your own personality and let that speak and know your own value and worth. I think that resonates a lot with clients as well.
And I think just realizing too that there's not necessarily a wrong design ever, right? It's a solution. Design is a solution to a problem, and it's a creative solution, which means that it really can be anything you want it to be. And I think there's projects now that I look back, that I did 20 years ago that I'm like, ooh, I don't want anybody to see that. But it got me to this point where I feel like I'm more and more comfortable with kind of owning what my thoughts are and my, and bringing that design to fruition. So I think that there's really no bad path there. I think for younger designers, I think it's really kind of trusting yourself and what you like and your style, and letting that evolve over time.
What do you see as the most exciting opportunities for innovation in the world of design in this industry?
At first was so, in a way, put off by all the AI and all of the, chat GPT. And I think lately I'm blown away by it. I think that it's crazy as a tool about how it's really helping, at least on our side, of bringing our ideas to fruition faster with putting them in the computer. It's not going to give you the final result, but it really just kind of helps get it on paper in a way, right? Like you can type it in, and it's but really interesting um, from a business owner, as well as just like using that to keep notes. We're now using AI for meetings, and it'll basically give us a summary, of what the client likes. I mean, it's interesting, but I think it's something that is definitely taking off, and I think it's going to be a really good tool. I know a lot of people are afraid of it. Oh, it's going to take my job. I think it's just going to make our jobs better and make us excel.
Yeah, it's an added extension of, you know, taking the in the weed stuff or the tedious items that you don't have to do. Because I think
Absolutely.
there's still going to have to be that human connection with clients, and they're going to want to touch, feel, see, and that AI cannot produce.
And the ideas are original, right? It's your ideas, but I think it's been so great to put on paper. And I'm a very old school in a way designer where I love to draw, and I enjoy that moment with the client where I'm trying to explain it through a pen on paper. But at the same time, I think it's been an amazing tool with our clients to show them something really quickly that's in our head, just to help that dialogue going forward.
And like you said, I'm very old school as well, where it's mind, hand to paper. And I think that is an artistry that the clients appreciate because it's not so generated. You don't have to send out a laptop. You can be right there with the client. It's like, oh, is this what you mean? And sketch it out. So there's that more that artistic value that humans bring that I don't think technology can ever replace.
I agree.
Yeah. If you could redesign any iconic building or space in the world, what would it be and why? Besides uh, the one you briefly mentioned.
Oh wow, that is so weird. Iconic. Well, there's several projects that are in Dallas that were, like the Dallas City Hall. I think is awful. It was IMK, but I would love to do that one. Um, you know, I I don't think I would necessarily redesign any. I think I would almost want to be able to add a story to it and kind of put my own spin on something. I love projects when the original house or building is there and you get kind of juxtapose. I feel like that's almost better than like a full redesign because you're still capturing that original story.
Like the Louvre and IMP.
Exactly. Exactly.
Is there a piece of art that inspires you?
Um, I super, have loved like visiting all over the world and seeing museums. I feel like the Monet lily pads that I saw in Paris last year, that I'm blanking on the name of the room, but it's the most beautiful room, and the way the murals encapsulate the entire space. You go from morning to night. I think it was definitely something that just kind of rang within me, as far as like the mood and the emotion, and then the skylight. It was amazing.
The tranquility and yeah, everything.
Tranquility. There's also so much that I think you could see almost like the thought that went into that work, and being able to stand in the middle of it, just observe it from all angles, and that it was designed specifically for that space, I think is something that rang true with me, and that's how I envision our designs. Right? It's like it's designed specifically for something. It's not meant to be framed and picked up and moved around. It's one of a kind.
So, if there was only three materials that you could ever work with the rest of your career, what would it be?
Your materials. I still think I would stick with my brick. I do love what we can do with steel and brass. And I love being able to work with woods, and different tones. I think they bring the warmth up.
Given you've been in business for 20 years now with your own firm, is that correct?
Yeah, it's it's unofficially 18, but I started about 20 years ago. So yeah,
Pretty close. What do you want Maestri Studio to be known for? What's the legacy you want to leave for?
I think definitely the authenticity and thoughtfulness. I think that I try really hard when we do, especially new construction. I try for it to be as thoughtful as possible. And there's always that almost sometimes, uphill battle with, the budget and, you get opinions from everybody, like you'll have the realtor say something and then the builder will say something. But I think at the end of the day, you still do a great job of bringing those projects to life and including them in the fabric of a neighborhood and kind of telling that story. I always think about our projects and how they'll kind of hold the test of time in the next 50 years or so, right? And I do want it to be a lasting positive impact. And I think by really treating each one of those as a unique design solution and, you know, looking into the details and the craftsmanship, I think that's, the authenticity of that, I think is definitely more important to me than like a shiny coffee table book or something.
Being a creative as you are and the travels and various projects that you work on, when you go home, are you like, okay, now I want to do this, now I want to do this, now I want to do it? Are you your own worst client?
I am definitely my own worst client, and I will say every renovation I've ever done to redo my house, I do it the wrong way, because I don't have the time to really draw it, and I just want to go with it. But I can't turn it off, and I do feel that our studio and my home is kind of our lab for experiment, and I am constantly moving things around, driving my family crazy. I'm like, hey, with this over here, it's just the way that I experiment with it in a little lab, and then bring it to a client and bring it to life.
I think, yeah, when you can't turn it off, it's just like you got to just go with it, people. You just got to go with it. Well, designing for longevity is a big part of your work. How do you approach creating spaces that feel timeless, even as trends evolve and change and are here for a couple years or maybe just momentarily?
I try to stay away from trends as much as possible. I think it's okay to sprinkle a few in, right, to make clients happy. And at the same time, there's no denying that, for example, like Art Deco was a trend. And, it came back in some forms like, in the 1980s, with the glass block and things like that. So I don't think that trends are bad. I think it's okay to try what's new. And I think what's interesting about how trends come and go is like you kind of realize what was a great idea and what wasn't so great of idea, right? But I think that experimental time is interesting. I really try to pull for example, if we design a renovation for a home that was built in 1920s, yeah, we're gonna pull some new trends in. But I think that that house had gone through the 20s, the 30s, the 60s, 70s, right? So I want to pull elements in that also kind of create that longevity. And I think by approaching projects that way, it does feel more timeless. And then when you do sprinkle in, the 2025 trend, it doesn't feel as out of place, and it's just kind of integrates into that fabric of what that narrative was for the house in general.
Is there a movement or a decade that really resonates with you as a creative?
Yes, I think that it's interesting that, I got a little bit, in a way, typecast with mid-century modern for a long time. I love it. I love how different it was for the period, like inspiration behind the space age and everything. My own home is very mid-century modern, but I think that my favorite is probably Art Deco and the drama of that, and in a lot of ways, how it got fine tuned in some ways to become a mid-century modern. Like there's a common thread there. But I would say I'm definitely drawn to Art Deco and the way that those materials work, the way the play of the shadow. I'll be really into like I said with the brick work that we're doing, like shadow lines and kind of creating that drama, I think is really important.
So for those that are watching us on YouTube, I can tell by your bookcase and your desk or table behind you. Is that a Sarin table?
This is a super boring table from a no-name place that I picked up at work. But yeah, our studio is definitely, it has a lot of mid-century pieces. Like I have the Danish walnut uh, wall unit behind me. Um, but this is also a good example. Like I'm not like a have to have the certain name piece and if it works or
Sorry, I just threw out the Sarin table because the curvature.
I love the certain table. But yeah, this is just a simple. It does have a little bit of hint of that.
What's one project that stands out as a defining moment in your career?
I think it's changed over my career. Of course, I do think that when we bought a new home during COVID and made it, our COVID project, it was able to be my lab in a really real way, in a way that I hadn't done before. It was a 1971 home, very modernist, and I was able to just do a lot of fun stuff. And I think that's also at the same time that I realized that I don't want to play by the rules, and I wanted to do some fun things that were experimental. And it got a lot of traction. That project, even if somebody looked at it and said, oh, I hate your yellow island. I think it really helped with people understanding my creativity and what I could do, and then I'm willing to try things.
When you look at the future design, what shifts are you most excited about?
Shifts as far as like what
Design and just the industry.
yeah. Um, I think it's going to be really interesting to see how, especially in the LA area, how we start rethinking and retooling design and construction for climate change. I think that's one of the biggest things that right now is so real, and one of the things people put outside of their head that it happened. Um, Very fortunate to be able to be working with Design Leadership Network on the Rebuild California initiative. So that's the forefront of my mind. But I think it's going to be interesting to see how that's tackled with building homes that aren't necessarily your modern box, and how can we integrate the character people are sometimes drawn to into those projects and making them sustainable and resistant.
Do you think more sustainability? People talk about sustainability and just materials and things like that. It was a trend, but now with various elements like climate control and just parameters, do you think that is going to be more instituted um, in as we move forward in development and construction and design?
I 100% do, and I see it more and more as something that is important to our clients that they are asking about. And even to go as far as to say like the fabrics and what's in the home, a lot of people are getting, they're requesting, things that have longevity and that are sustainable, but also that, aren't gonna off gas and pollute the home environment. People are more cognizant of those things now.
What do you see in your own environment in Dallas? Some of the leads of design in the community there versus other places that you're working in? How do you compare it?
Dallas is an interesting place because I don't think a lot of things are necessarily built with the longevity in mind. It is, it's a great city. It's a very move on to the new thing. So a lot of people don't really build here, I think, thinking forever homes. I do have clients that are doing that, but a lot of people, we've even had several clients that are repeat clients, right? We did warehouse 15 years ago and we've done the new one. I think Dallas is a little different in that aspect. Whereas other places that we're working is very much for the longevity and also thinking about what you're going to hand down to the next generation, like what that housing stock is going to be like. And they want to be, have like something they're proud of to leave. Um, and Dallas is a new city, and there's just not that same air of preserving, and it's 50-year lifespan, and they tear it down.
Yeah, true. Very true. Have you ever, how do you deal with clients that, because the industry has changed so much where everything is at their disposal, you have Instagram, you have TV shows, you have everything, they think everything is instant satisfaction. They don't understand that the time and effort it goes into designing something, where they bring a picture, I want this, but it doesn't fit the program. How do you work with a client that kind of says they want something that just doesn't fit with their personality, their budget, their lifestyle?
I think we are really good at filtering through what they bring to us and putting together the common denominator of what it is they're trying to show it. Like, what about the photo is really the inspiration? And a lot of times at first glance, it might be like, wow, that's, really terrible. Or, that's, doesn't match the style of the home at all. But I think, we've learned to kind of stop and pause and ask what it is about it that you're drawn to. And it really, now I think we can look at a variety of things that clients will bring to us, and we can tell what they're trying to tell us, right? That we can understand like what they're trying to bring to the table and what it is about it. Um, I always encourage my clients, we have an Instagram that is only for clients. So they will share Instagram stories or feeds that they like, about their project. Um, and I also have clients that will bring in binders and magazine tearings. And I just say like, hey, whatever speaks to you, to let you share that with us. We want to see it, and send us photos. Um, and I think we've gotten really good at reading between the lines there.
So, what's next for Eddie Maestri and Maestri Studio?
We just opened a little office in LA in it's September, and we're building up, some work in Southern California. And our goal is really, personally and professionally, is to go back and forth as much as possible, and enjoy being out there. And my boys are 12 years old, and I know that in 6 years we'll probably be empty nesters. So there's always that kind of dream about what's going to come next. For our studio, we're working on a lot of fun things right now. Like I mentioned, the mantles are always evolving. We've taken that a little bit further. We're starting our own lighting collection, and we're starting also our like a custom furniture collection that is a little bit beyond what we've already been doing with upholstery, but using stone and wood to kind of create really interesting pieces, and also bringing that to life with the outdoor component. Because we're doing a lot more and more landscape architecture now, and kind of how we're bridging that together. So it's been fun. We just had a really fun design charrette last Wednesday at the studio, and all these ideas are now in some form of paper. So we're excited to see where it goes.
So you're juggling.
Yeah, always juggling. Yes,
So for the collections, lighting and others, is that being handled through representation, through showrooms, or directly through the studio?
It's directly through the studio. It's under Maestri Arcana.
Okay. And where can people find you and Maestri Studio?
So our website is maestristudio.com, and our Instagram is Maestri Studio.
Perfect. Well, before we wrap up, Eddie, do you want to have any final thoughts or advice for those listening who are passionate about the future of design?
I think keeping track of your ideas over time for me has proven to be so useful. And like I mentioned, my sketchbooks and my on a sketch journal, just having things you can kind of understand your thought process as you grow as a designer is so important. But I think always just kind of trusting your instinct and like I said earlier, going against the grain.
Very, very true. But the sketchbook idea, I think, is an integral part. I was told that many, many years ago, when I was younger in a different life, that, that was one idea. You can think about it, but having it there, pen to paper, constantly, you can create. There might be other stuff that you'd like and throw away, but at least it keeps the brain evolving and it keeps you engaged.
And I try, I used to throw it away. I used to rip them out and throw them away. And I've learned that the ones that I kept, it might be a terrible sketch and a terrible idea, but it brings a new idea.
Right. It prompts something else to come into play. Well, Eddie, this has been a pleasure. Thank you for coming on our show today, and much continued success to you and Maestri Studio as you move forward and continue your journey.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon. In a world often obsessed with the minimal and the safe, Edward Maestri dares to design with color, character, and conviction. Edward has carved out a signature style that is both timeless and apologetically personal. Thank you, Edward, for taking us behind the curtain of your vibrant world and for sharing your philosophy, your heart, and your joy with us. I'm Craig Beaumont Flynn, and this has been Beyond the Design.
Hi, you're listening to a Pod for Good Media Network podcast. We are a network that provides podcasting production services and a supportive community in which podcasters can thrive. If you're a podcaster local in the Tulsa area, we would love to have your show on the network. If you are interested in starting one, we would love to help you get started. Find us online at podforgoodmedia.com and fill out our Pod With Us form. Happy podcasting.